in.
Okay, can you... Okay.
Perfect.
You let people in? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. Hi, everyone. It's that time again. It is the end of the month. It's Friday, which must mean that it's time for PMO HotHouse. So let's get going. Yeah. Whoosh! There's all that lovely heat. If you're listening to us.
Still here.
No, Northern Hemisphere. It's I think this is going to be our last crack of the summer. I hope you all are well. It is back with PMO HotHouse, and we have got the usual eclectic lineup of things going on. We've got John with us. Hi, John.
Hi, gang. How are we doing?
Not too bad. It's good to see you back on UK soil, I do believe. Yes.
Absolutely. Back on the right side of the pond and in the right time zone this time.
Excellent. And we've got Eileen, and you're also in UK soil, but somewhere else today, yes?
I'm in my dad's old workroom up north, so that's has some very old and exciting things in here. And I have to apologise. My dad walks in, he's very much senile. He's been in once, so he may show again through the recording.
Excellent. So let's get going, shall we? Let's kick off with the latest of the... So you're not even already familiar with the HotHouse. It is eclectic, which means that there is a bit of silliness, hence the little segment breaks, but there is a serious intent at heart, which is about the latest PMO news. So let's crack on, shall we? So many of you will recognise this, which is P3O. I should do a little quiz at this point, and people can tell me what P3O stands for, and that's not P3O, not P30, as some people used to call it back in the day. However, you're not going to be seeing that logo for very long because it's got a new one. Look at that. What do we think? That is the latest news from PeopleCert. They've been going for a rebranding, which has raised a few eyebrows, definitely within the world of PMO and people that know P3O and people that may already know Prince 2. But that is the new logo for P3O. I would love to know what you think. Drop it into chat if you like. Essentially, what they've gone for is Prince 2 is now a brand in its, I suppose, to categorize everything that's related to projects, programs, portfolio, in terms of their, the products of things that they do at PeopleCert. Yes, it looks quite confusing. And I think also quite wordy for a logo. However, yeah, that's what they've gone for. What do we think, boys and girls? Eileen, John, do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I've just put it in chat. What do they actually call Prince 2 now? Prince 2, Prince 2. So good they named it twice. It's just this, I think they're just, they're trying to back up the kind of the branding, aren't they, by saying everybody knows Prince 2. Well, let's wrap Prince 2 around all of the other Axelos products to make sure that kind of all of them are included.
Yeah.
I mean, they got stuck with us a while ago, didn't they? There was Prompts, then there was Prince, then Prince 2. They should have arguably gone to Prince 3 with the next iteration, but somebody had already bought the domain name for that. And Prince 2 had recognition, so they stuck with Prince 2. So you ended up with lots of awkward iterations on it. Prince 2 :2009. Then they dropped the annual iterations and just went with Prince 2 for everything. This one, though, I don't care what they call the project methodology itself. What bugs me about this one is this feels like a step back for PMO people, because if you look at the PMO, arguably in most organizations where you have an enterprise PMO, project management and the methodology, the methods and frameworks that are used sit underneath the PMO. The PMO is defining those, and the PMO is a function of the organization. What they're doing with this logo is very much saying that the PMO is a function of project management. And it's not in the modern PMO space. It's an organizational function. It's an operational strategic function that stays around long after the individual projects have gone. So I really don't like the sort of implication that comes with it. I get what they're doing with a brand, but it doesn't sit well with me at all.
I think it's also worth saying, John, that management of portfolios is now Prince 2 management of portfolios. And it's going to be Prince 2 managing successful programs. So they're lumping all of their products, whether it be project management, program management, or portfolio management, or P3O, or the Agile. They're all going to be under this Prince 2 banner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like some of the recommendations or choices here. Jim said, is that now P4? Or is it the artist formerly known as Prince 2? Boom! Well done, Robert. Excellent.
And the other thing, just to add in, a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. We can moan about the naming, but I mean, Prince 2 as a methodology has gone through a lot of iterations, and the principles there are sound. P3O has a lot of good content in there. I think there's an update to MSP coming soon. I'm really excited about that one. So there is still some good content, and you shouldn't let the naming conventions put you off actually getting the materials, doing the courses, and upskilling yourselves.
Okay, if anyway, watch this space. It is a logo, by the way. It is a logo, because I think if somebody asked us, does it change for name? It's still Portfolio Program and Project Officers. That is a logo, which is a very wordy logo. Anyway, I think we've done that one today. Anyway, so just keeping on the theme though about Axelos products, and look, there's an old logo of MOP. Many of you will be probably familiar with management of portfolios. You might be glad to know that Steve Jenner, the original author of Management of Portfolios, is releasing a new book. You'll see that it is not an Axelos one or PeopleCert, or it's Managing Portfolios, a slightly different name, and it is now going to be coming under the APMG International kind of camp. I can see and understand why you might have done that, just the way that people say at work. It can take a while before updates and refreshes happen. Steve's obviously wanting to crack on and do an update, because obviously that last version, 2011, quite a long time ago now. Steve is actually going to be one of the keynote speakers at the PMO conference in Edinburgh, talking about the new managing portfolios. And just on that theme as well, you may also know Steve Jenner's name because he did the Managing Benefits book. So that was a second edition book a few years ago now, again, still with the APMG. Some people recognize Managing Benefits is the training course that goes with it. Just to let you know that he is releasing the third edition of that book as well. So there's two things coming out from Steve. We're great to have him in Edinburgh talking to us about it. But I know that those are two pieces of work that people have certainly had on their shelves in terms of the PMO. And just keeping the theme of books again, many of you might recognize, if you're part of PMI, we have PMI membership, they do a number of practitioner guides to do with various different areas of project management, benefits realization. You can see there, risk, business analysis. They've got agile, they've got other varieties. And if you are a member, you can download those as part of your membership. But I don't know if you were recognized that actually there's a PMO version coming. It's currently in the review stage, and it will be released in December 2024. That book is coming because of, if many of you are aware of Americo Pinto, had the PMO Global Alliance. Global Alliance got taken over by PMI, or incorporated, whatever word you want to call that. And this is going to be one of the first pieces of work that will come out of that new, I don't know if we should say partnership. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it will be released in December 2024. So we're going to be looking forward to understanding what that one's all about. But just based on some of the other practice guides and things that are already there, I think you can probably expect there to be anybody who's aware already of the work that America did around the value ring. I suspect that that's what the PMO guide might consist of, but we'll see. We'll see in December. So moving on, many of you in terms of the software things, you might have heard of Capterra. They came out with a new project management tools survey just a few weeks ago, specifically talking to project managers, not PMO, but I thought you might be interested in where your project managers' heads are in terms of questions specifically around AI. And I thought this was quite interesting about they see the greatest impact in project management around decision making, which I thought were really, really interesting. What is also interesting to me is actually how many project managers are actually using the AI and the tools versus whether it's the PMO that is helping them to do that or producing those things for them that help with decision making. That bit's not too clear. However, just on the other side of it, again, just getting into the heads of project managers here, about what they're feeling right now in terms of AI in project management. There's probably no surprises there, because I think actually some of them are probably familiar for many of us. It doesn't matter if you're a project manager or PMO or whatever, but those are, you know, just some of the insights that came out of it in terms of what they're thinking about AI. What I found interesting with this survey, though, and if you want to go and have a look at the full thing, is just how many they had a question there about how much AI is being used in their organizations, and many of them were saying quite a bit, and I didn't believe that. Just based on the amount of people that are not doing so much stuff on AI right now, or how they define AI is quite you know, is an interesting one. Does using Copilot occasionally mean that you're doing AI now in your organization? Quite sure what we mean and what levels and depths and stuff here, but not bad for a top level survey around project management tools. And if you want to go and have a look at some other aspects of that survey, give Capterra a look and see what you think. Now, PMO to the rescue yet again in this next news item. This is all about a council in the Northwest, I don't think in Cheshire East. They are in trouble, like a lot of other councils, in terms of danger of going bankrupt. Perhaps that's quite old news. However, what I found what was quite interesting about this one is how this particular council is going to sort out that problem. And hooray, a transformation program management office to the rescue in order to be able to manage a reform program that they are going to need to have in place in order to be able to overcome their challenges, not only cost savings, but also talking about generations of revenues and things. For anybody who's not familiar with Cheshire East, if you have ever watched that old program Pride and Prejudice from back in the day with Colin Firth, filmed at the house in Lyme Park, that is Cheshire East. So you can get a feel for perhaps which part of the world that is. So again, PMO comes to the rescue, but I thought this cheeky little comment at the bottom in terms of the comment pages on this news item is, again, perhaps the PMO, are they going to get it in the neck if this doesn't go all right? No, actually, it's down to the council officers and the councillors to do their job properly. It'll be interesting to see how they get on over the next 4 years, because that is how long their transformation programme lasts. So I'm going to be keeping that one in my diary, and I'm going to get in touch with them in about 3 years' time and find out exactly what they're doing.
Do you want to do it now so you can have a before and after story, Lindsay?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. So yeah, I just thought it was really interesting where PMO pops up in the news, and because we don't see it very often. So I just thought I'd share that one with you. And then almost finally from me is this, right? Now, I'm sorry, it's not PMO directly related. However, this gentleman used to work for the company behind the frenzy ticket buying. John, is there any tips for being able to get tickets on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock? How can we beat the Ticketmaster system? Come on, you to work there in the PMO.
I've not been there for a while. The only things that I can suggest are making, if I've seen people have a couple of computers running and trying to sort of get in as a family unit, as a group. It's quite a good strategy. It used to be a very long time ago that the platforms for mobile and the platform for desktop were very slightly different. So the queuing times were different on those. That changed. That got changed years ago and standardized, but it is possible that maybe if you were operating on one device, you might get slightly different results on different devices. I don't know. I've not been there for years, but that would be the other thing. Maybe you have your phone going, a Chrome browser going, an Edge browser going, and yeah, and see how you get on. And above all, please don't buy them to resell them on the secondary market, because obviously that means real fans don't get tickets, or they get them but at inflated prices.
Exactly. Well, Tanya's got the she's a Swiftie, so she's got some tips. So it's multiple devices, not just open a couple of tabs. So thank you very much.
Or it's getting your mates to do it, isn't it, Lindsay?
Mates do it, yes, Eileen. Anyway, just before we move on from the news, there's one little bit that I've in my frenzy to find some news, I forgot about this one. Many of you may be familiar already with the Impact Summit. House of PMO are doing a session there. I know, John, you're doing a session there as well. It's one of it is the largest PMO virtual conference. Not just PMO, there's a lot more transformation, strategy, execution type stuff. Many of you might be familiar already with Laura Barnard and her work, but that is coming up, as you can see, in 9 days' time. September the 9th, runs for a week. You can register now, and you can access the things free if you watch them. That's how it kind of works. So have a look at it, and yeah, it's a great learning opportunity, as ever with stuff like that. So thank you very much for those tips, and I'll let you know if I've got any tickets for Oasis on Saturday morning. Okay.
Anybody else got any news? I'm just asking if anybody else has got any news.
Yeah, has anybody got any news? Have you got any news, John? Do you have anything you want to add before I move on?
No, not other than getting back and struggling with jet lag. That's it for me. I mean, I'm doing a Coursera course on organizational analysis at the moment, and that plays into the talk that I'm giving you later. But yeah, I'll save that one for later.
Yeah, and Shane's completed his apprenticeship. Shane.
Oh, well done, Shane.
What's your apprenticeship in? There's a lot of apprenticeships out there. Is it to do project data and stuff, or?
No, I did the APM one and the Associate Project Management Apprenticeship. So
Right.
yeah, fortunately, yeah, I got a distinction in that, and
Hey.
so it also included the PMQ exam, but I understand now level 4 won't have that as a requirement going forward. They're taking that out. It's only for level 6. So
Brilliant. If you've got any information about that, can you bang it into the chat in case anybody else is interested? That'd be lovely.
yeah, can do. Yeah, it's for apprenticeships. It should be open to most people at work, but how some workplaces promote it more than others. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, so let's move on then. Eileen, you're up next. Let's have a look. So we have got a problem. We've got a problem, Eileen.
We have it. Can you just go back one slide before we kind of get onto that one? Let me just I was speaking to another client again last week, and partly speaking to the organization, partly speaking to the PMO, and once again we're in that situation where they don't really understand what a PMO is and what it can do. And so I know Lindsay and I, part of our work at House of PMO is continuously having to address this kind of, well, do you know what a PMO is and what a PMO does? So I thought what I'd do today is just kind of pick out 5 of those elements in terms of what people might think of a PMO that we don't necessarily think is the case, some of the challenges it provides or the impact it has for the PMO in place, but also then trying to give you some tactics to overcome that. And as I say, you know, as I said to Lindsay, these are my suggestions. More than happy that anybody who's got some other suggestions kind of do join in on the chat as ever the chat is going. So on to the first one, which is the age-old. The PMO is for admin only. And one of the challenges, I say they're kind of specifically admin only. I think as we've been doing the service catalogue project, we understand and recognise that there are still a number of PMOs that need to do admin. And I still recall when we had the conference a couple of years ago, we had the NHS PMO, and their most valued service during the COVID was to get the minutes out of the minutes and the actions updated every 24 hours. So, you know, that administrative job is absolutely critical at certain times, and just really useful a lot of the other times. The challenge is where individuals in the organizations think the PMO is only for administration. So the impact of that, if Lindsay kind of pulls that, is it tends to be in a couple of ways. Is that from a PMO perspective, from an organization, they have very limited expectations of the PMO, and it tends to be tucked away in the corner. So it doesn't really get any opportunities to shine. It doesn't get any opportunities to add value. And unfortunately, it sometimes doesn't necessarily reflect the people who are in the organization and in the PMO. It's just the PMO isn't really there to do anything. So therefore, it can be kind of really difficult to recruit. And if you're in a situation where, you know, your PMO is not reporting into the right level, then actually they're kind of one of the best things that we can do, if we pull up the responses there, is to go and do some active stakeholder engagement. Well done, Eileen. So good we named it twice. Is to go and do some kind of real stakeholder engagement around the senior team to find a sponsor who actually understands the potential role of a PMO. I mean, some of these problems arise because everybody's experience of the PMO can be different and has been different and comes with some baggage from kind of some previous experience. But it really is kind of down to kind of hunting around a senior level as you can kind of muster to really get somebody to be a sponsor and work with them to agree and sell to the organisation a PMO that clearly aligns and adds value to the organisation. And I think the challenges kind of going on with this is once that's done, you've also then got to make sure you've got the right staff who are in a position to provide the services to deliver the new PMO vision that gets given. So sadly, in organisations that still exists. Hopefully you don't get in one of those organisations, but if you kind of find that is one of your issues, then perhaps that's a good way to deal with it. So second way that the PMO is understood, and this is kind of one that I think we have to take some accountability for getting ourselves into this position. In terms that the PMO is accountable for all reporting. And we forget, and everybody else forgets, that actually our role is there to collate the reports, collate the information that we're providing with, and perhaps provide some insights and analysis to what we're provided. If people see us as responsible for all of the reporting, it means we spend hours chasing the project managers, the program managers. Can you provide this information? And also when any information is not provided, whenever we kind of go and present and provide our insights and analysis, the blame gets hung on us at the PMO. Well, why haven't you got all of the reports? And so I think in order to kind of be able to address this, there's a couple of things that we can actually do, if Lindsay brings those up, is that we have to recognise, you know, kind of talking about kind of the service. And it's really interesting working on this service catalogue project about being very clear about who provides what and recognising that if the PMO agree to deliver some reports to senior managers, they are at that point of agreement signing up the PMs as part of the supply chain to provide that information. So we have to be very clear that when we're kind of putting some reporting in place and promising that to senior managers, that we actually engage with the PMs to let them know what the expectations are of them and what and how they're meant to produce that information. And then the second bit is actually make it very visible. So the RACI, hopefully responsible, accountable, consulted and informed. I nearly forgot that. It's because I always write RC instead, which is a far better way of doing that. But also the SIPOC tables, which is the supplier inputs, process outcomes, and customer, which is what we're putting in the service catalogue for all of the individual services. And then people recognise and are held to account for what they're personally accountable for. So sometimes it's easier to do it right from the beginning to try to do it retrospectively, because people sometimes think you're trying to let yourself off the hook, but actually it really is about kind of having that in place from the word go. So third one that I think people don't really understand is that, and this one kind of really annoys me, and I'll tell you why for a couple of reasons, is because a lot of people think PMO has authority to make decisions. I'm currently running some introductory sessions of PMO for an organisation, and it's really interesting because everybody assumes that the portfolio decisions are being made by the PMO. When I was working in I'm trying to work, I can't remember, it was my last PMO job, but when it came to gate reviews, there was a general assumption that it was the PMO who made the decision whether projects and programs go through the gate. So this causes, if we bring the impact up, this causes a number of problems. Go on, Lindsay, press the button. There we go. Is that we actually get seen as the policeman, and we get this because, and what happens then is that project and program managers don't see us as, you know, kind of part of the solution. They don't see us as people who they should be sharing that information with, people who they can come to for help. They see if they come and tell the PMO will make arbitrary decisions on what needs to happen to their project, what decisions need to be made, what resources are going to be taken off, what tasks that need to be done. And I have to say, there are a number of PMOs who don't help themselves because they also believe that they have the authority to make decisions. And we need to be very clear that if you go back to any project management textbook, the line of authority goes senior executive down to sponsor, sponsor down to project manager down to project team. That's where the authority, that's where the decision making is. And our role is very much around providing advice and guidance. And if, you know, we often say that at senior management level, if the senior managers, execs decide, you know, we've gone through the process of portfolio prioritization and projects should be 1, 2, and 4, and they go with 2, 7, and 26, that's absolutely their call, because they are accountable for managing the strategy and delivering on the strategy. And it's our job to hold up the mirror to that and say, hold on, if you make that decision, there are some issues. And I think we kind of almost forget when it comes down to program and project level, that is still our role. Yes, we don't just jump in and say, well, you can't have this and you can't have that, and you need to do it this way. Our job is about saying, well, these are the implications, these are the recommendations, this is the process that should be followed. And if the project and program don't want to listen, then we have the opportunity to escalate that up to the next part of the organisation. So just a couple of things that we should, I think is helpful for us to respond to that, is just make it very clear, you know, that kind of transparent governance piece. So who makes what decisions, but also in terms of on what basis they make those decisions. So just kind of making that clear again, you know, kind of from a service perspective, but also in some of the reporting and some that we kind of comes back down the way about how we articulate that, about, you know, kind of the executive committee have decided, the overall program board have made this decision, and we don't kind of take, or it don't misrepresent how those decisions have been made. But also make sure that we've got some services in place that, you know, we've said on kind of on what basis decisions are made, then we should be delivering services that help people get through that process to make sure that they can actually kind of survive. So number 4, I think, is the next one. Okay, so I've separated this from admin because I think this is different. This is all about kind of, we're suddenly going to have to fill out 27 forms, and the project that we think we could do in 3 months is now going to take 9 months because the PMO are not there to kind of help us. They're there to kind of just kind of slow us down and kind of put loads of steps in that aren't required. So I think the impact of that, typically that PMs will try to fly their projects under the radar. Oh, it's not big enough to follow the process. Oh, those processes don't apply to us. Oh, that's only for kind of projects over a certain level. And so we end up kind of being ostracized, and there's occasionally a kind of a very big project will come in where we might be allowed to play, but generally you'll find we've got lots of little projects that nobody wants to play with us, even though it absolutely is required. So the responses for this one are actually don't be bureaucratic. I mean, that's me kind of just be, again, you know, I work with the PMO who spent a year copying out Prince 2 and MSP to decide on kind of what their local process was. Remember that my husband's favourite saying is one size fits nobody. Be pragmatic and make sure we're available to tailor to suit the size and risk of a project. And if you really want to get some buy-in, find the guinea pig in the who's actually you can help, and then use them as an advocate for the PMO services. And finally, because I want to give enough time to John, is this whole concept is that we don't add value, where there is an extra kind of overhead, which is a nice to have rather than an absolute requirement. And as we saw in the PMI report, there's a couple of years, is that, you know, we're constantly getting asked how many people in the PMO, what do they do? Do you really need to have them that senior? And if you've got a really good sponsor, they're constantly having to defend the PMO, which is wearing for them. And if you haven't got a good sponsor, they're going to give in pretty quickly anyway. So one of the things, and we've produced kind of several things of this in the past, is to actually start just be very clear about why you're there and make sure that your vision statement demonstrates how you're going to add value to the corporate mission, vision or strategy, and make sure that you have metrics, not just at a service level and not just how busy you are, but how you're actually kind of measures the value and the contribution you make to that corporate mission aligned to your PMO vision. So a quick rant through really from me for 5 of organisations who don't understand PMOs and ways hopefully that you can help overcome that in your organisations.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And as I say, I got a bit engrossed there and a bit funny with the old mouse finger, but thank you very much. Let's move on. Something different, and this old fella, this is a face we don't get to see very often in the PMO, isn't it, John? Are you on mute?
It wouldn't be a Zoom call without somebody having to say you're on mute. There we go. Happy to do my duty to the gods of Zoom there. Yeah, this is I mentioned it. I've been sort of looking at a course on organizational change and organizational analysis, look at how you frame and look at organizations in different ways, and this is kind of some thinking that came out of that I just thought I'd share with you all for sort of 5 minutes now, really. So I've got Charles Darwin as the basis of this here. I'm linking Charles Darwin to the PMO. Charles Darwin, as you know, very famous for his Origin of Species, gallivanting around the Galapagos, and basically putting together this theory that life evolves based on the environment and the habitat that they're in. And there's a lot of papers out there, a lot of research out there that uses the model of the environment and biology, and looks at how we can apply that to organizations. We're sort of taking that one step further and having to think about how it applies to the PMO space. Do you want to move on to the next slide for us? Lovely. Survival of the fittest is one of the key things that Darwin was talking about, and PMOs need to stay fit as well. It's not just for nature, it's just as true in organizational space as well. We can carry on flicking through, Lindsay, onto the next one. I'll get to the meat of the thinking on it, I think. I read a book, Hannon and Freeman, and I apologise to Lindsay here. Me and Lindsay have one of the things that me and Lindsay find about running sort of doing this session every month is it gets quite expensive for both of us because there's constantly recommendations for new books to get us, and the shelves are constantly filling and overflowing. But this here is Hannon and Freeman did a book called Organizational Ecology. It's published back in the 90s. It's not a PMO book. It is very, very dry. It's very, very technical. It's got an awful lot of research in it, and just to warn you of that. Nonetheless, was sort of quite interesting. There's a few things that I want to just draw out that I found quite interesting there. Firstly, variation occurs in nature, where you get mutations and different versions of a species arise, and they adapt to the environment that they're in. PMOs need to adapt to their environments as well. That sounds pretty sensible, right? We've got a lot of PMOs that thrive while others kind of stay obsolete. Now, PMOs don't compete directly with each other normally in organizations, although I've seen it in some. But what we're looking at here, if you look at organizations sort of globally, you do see this pattern as well, that some have thriving PMOs that are well respected, recognized within their organizations, where they're genuinely helping the organization achieve benefits, and others seem to struggle and just kind of fade away. And some of those that fade away seem to be following the right tick box things, and they know what they should be doing, and yet they still don't seem to gel. And a lot of that is about not factoring in the competitive environment, doing PMO by the book without understanding the context that they're operating in and how they need to be supporting the organization around them or adapting to the organization around them. And the last one there, adopting successful strategies and routines allows the PMO to thrive, which makes sense. But what do those strategies and routines look like, and how do we find the right ones for the organization then is the key question for us. Which leads us to the next slide, I think, Lindsay. Maybe the one after that. Lost track of my slide order now. There we go. Let's go for that one. So within this, have this question about variation and mutation, right? So where we have the PMO, so you've come into an organization, you've done a sort of by the book PMO implementation, but we need to vary what we're doing to account for that in the organization. So this idea of population ecology assumes that variations that we have are selected because they are reliable and accountable. So they're basically things that work. When we look at organizations, if we look at a PMO, we say, well, actually, what we've got there is something that works. If we take things like P3O, as we mentioned earlier, we might put a PMO in that has processes that has ways of working out of P3O. We might draw on some of the services out of the new service catalog that I know Eileen and her team are working on and apply those services. And we assume that because those are sort of standard, they've been peer reviewed by people across the PMO space, they are reliable and proven, then they should just work. But it's worth calling out on that those are only the best variants that are reliable and countable at the moment, at that point in time. So it's worth thinking about this in terms of sort of variations and mutations. There may be mutations or variations to the PMO model that you've got that didn't succeed in the past, ideas that you had that you pitched that didn't quite thrive in your organization because maybe the timing wasn't right, maybe the politics around it wasn't right at that time. It still might have been the best thing to do. So I think whilst we look at successful PMOs and whilst we look at successful models, it is really easy to assume that because that PMO is thriving, it is the best way of working. And population ecology sort of says, actually, that's not the case. It's just the one that happens to be surviving. There may still be other options that are optimal that hadn't been selected in the past or that we haven't discovered yet, all of which means we need to carry on experimenting. Come back to that thought in a second. On the next slide, we talk about niches. This is one that I found quite interesting. We've got niche theory, which looks at different environmental conditions favouring specialist or generalist forms. And the butterflies there, just to have a think about how many different variations there are on types of butterflies out there. In the PMO space, we've got the two kind of areas that we looked at niche-wise. One is your generalist PMOs. So these are the people, you think about maybe bringing a contractor in that's got very, very good, strong, generic PMO skills. They can come into a situation, build you a PMO, and it will work. Those are great for operating at a global level across multiple parts of the organization because they have those standard ways of working. They're also great where you've got a high level of change in the organization, transformation happening, things moving in and out. The organization as itself is quite unstable and fluid. Having those standard ways of working in generalist PMO structures works really well. However, there are also those very, very tight niches and scope for more specialist PMOs. So what we're looking at here is if you've got a more stable environment, so if the PMO is operating in a stable department or the organization is largely stable in what it does, then we should be looking to consider how we can specialize the PMO, highly specialize it to the environment that we're in, getting people with the right skills to use certain tools, getting experts in different skill sets within the organization. And ways of working within the organization. And you certainly find in those situations, those PMOs are aligned a lot more to the organization than they are to generic PMO practices. They understand the heart of the organization and what makes it tick. And those tend to outcompete generic generalist PMOs a lot in those situations. They're not so good generally. So if I have somebody who's an expert on one specific tool in one organization, they might be thriving in their PMO, and then you take them out of that organization and put them into another one, they might really, really struggle because it's not the same environment. They don't use the same tools and it's difficult for them. However, it's about finding that right balance. There is, Eileen, that's a good point. Yeah, there is the danger that everyone thinks they should be special. Again, it's about finding that balance and recognizing whether the generalist PMO skills, a generalist PMO is the important thing for your organization, or whether there's an opportunity for actually really, really improving things for that organization by putting in those deep skills and things there as well. From that, I want to just take you forward to give you a little challenge to think about this, really. So what I want to say here basically is in your PMOs, have a think about the fact that just because you've got a good mature PMO running right now, that doesn't mean you're the optimum space in your PMO journey. You should be running experiments, or what we're calling the mutations if we're going from biology, that will give you the next strategic edge. Those can discover new, better, effective ways of working. Just make sure you set expectations that some of those might fail as you're running risky experiments. Some will fail, and some will live, and some will take you forward. And the challenge to you therefore is how can you run those low risk experiments with your PMO to discover a more effective way of working? Just something to ponder for you there. The last slide I've got is just a call to action, really challenging you to think about whether your PMO is evolving to be the fittest in the environment you've got. Should it be generalist? Should it be specialist? What's the right balance of those two? And are you continually challenging yourself to bring about new mutations, experimenting with those ideas and approaches to provide you that competitive edge? And that was me.
Thank you very much. And we are sorry about the timings today. We're just getting back into the swing of it. It's been the kind of holiday mode, but we're coming to the end of the session. So thanks for joining us today. There is more coming as ever from the House of PMO. Next session coming up is the PMO versus project controls, which you could say is a generalist versus the specialists. So join us, please, on 4th of September. Other things that are coming down the line, and of course, we've got the conference in Edinburgh that we already mentioned as well. So before we go any further today, have a lovely rest of your day. Keep on PMOing. We'll see you again. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Take care.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.